Alright, let's talk germination methods. This is my preferred method of germination at the moment, and I'll explain to you later on, the way that Akima does it, the way that I do it. I buy a new species every year. This is atomic orange corn. And so the reason I germinate the corn this way is I just take a takeout container, put a paper towel underneath it, and I spray it with a spray bottle. When I monitor it, every 12 hours I take a look. So I keep it in the closet to block out all the sunlight. And as you can see, they're popping. That's how I increase my germination rate success, because I plant in a specified plot according to like mathematics and whatnot. So to get rid of the cases where I only get 1 or 2 in a spot where there should be 10 is by doing it like this. And day by day I'll just pick out the ones that pop. Bada bing, bada boom. It works with the beans as well. The beans are actually going to take up more moisture. But don't worry about it, because you can see they're getting a little bit ripply. Like this, the paper towel is kind of dry. But you can see the beans are getting a little bit ripply and they're shiny. So they're not dead. They're just taking all the moisture from the environment. So all I have to do, excuse my lack of lighting here, just like that. Oh, wow. Almost dropped the corn. So just like that. And then I put the top back on. That's why I recycle these takeout containers. Now the squash are easy. I can monitor the squash, and you can even see that through the container. You see how they're shiny? That means there's enough moisture. You don't want to drown them. They need oxygen, but you can see they're popping. So they're ready to plant. Same thing goes for this one. The squash, they're germinating very quickly. That's a good thing. And those are my germination methods. And then I put them in the ground when they're here. I don't like, most crops, I don't like germinating and then transplanting. I try and do as little work as possible, but maximize my results. And so this is how I do it. And yeah, that's it, really. It's simple. Very simple. Now, as I was saying earlier, I try a different species. This cost me, I don't know, between $10 and $15 for 3 bags of atomic corn. I plan to turn this into a 5-pound bag of corn, though. So next year, if I was to plant the same one, I wouldn't count these. I would just take 20 kernels and put them in each plot, and then thin them out as they go along. That's how Akima does them, the Hopi method. So this video is about germination methods. And you can see I've got a whole bunch of different, that's not mine. I've got many different germination methods going on. And I just want to talk a minute about the options that people have. Oh, take a look at this. This is the salad palette. This thing's cool. So I have peas and some flowers growing up top. And I have, you can see some other stuff growing right here. Peas, and I threw some tomatoes in the middle. The first tomatoes that I threw in there, they didn't germinate. So I recently threw another set of tomatoes in there. Hopefully they germinate. And they'll grow up top. Tomatoes and peas up top, but everything else down here is herbs. I forget what I put in everywhere, but I have cilantro, I have basil, I have all different herbs. You can see them just popping out now. See? This one is some type of lettuce, and it's taking very well. That is either spinach or arugula down there. You see? These are volunteer lettuces from last year, and I had to replant what was here because those didn't pop. But those are some options. Here I've got sweet potatoes, raspberries, and some fig plants that are just sitting in solo cups in a holder. Okay. I've got one of these I had from before. These are sunflowers. For whatever reason, there was a terrible germination rate this year. I have trouble. There's nowhere in my house that gets enough sunlight to germinate. I can grow tropical plants, but I can't germinate crops. It's weird. So I just do the best I can. I don't have a greenhouse. I've got some cauliflower growing here, and if you notice, I've got a tomato there. Whenever something doesn't pop up, I replace it later down the line. See that thing? That's purple basil. These are sunflowers. Now, the beauty of some of these containers is there's no drainage underneath here. Well, there's no water there either, but I get it's a lot easier to take care of these when I can just fill up the water here. Same thing with this one. There is water in this. See? And as you can see right away, this soil's drier. These are like cucumbers, jelly melons, anything that vines. Anything that's got vines on it. This one doesn't have, this one drains the water, and so the soil stays drier. Now these are new this year. These I purchased. They're more expensive, but they're hard plastic. They're not gonna break unless I slam them or I drop something on them. Those, if you handle them incorrectly, they get all dented. So these, and they have drainage holes in the bottom. But as you can see, these are beets, and I had a decent germination rate. I want to say, I mean, it's not statistically it's not good, but this was a new method, and they dry out faster than I'm used to. So I had to go through and plant some more beets again. So I planted 1, 2, 3. Each one has 162 cells in it. So, I mean, I planted a lot. I planted a lot of beets. That's my favorite. I planted onions. None of them germinated. So I came through and I filled all those up with onions. I filled in the beets that didn't germinate. I filled them in again with beets. So I'll be planting these later. And then I filled this one up with buckwheat because I'm going to incorporate buckwheat in. Now basically I'm going to compare and contrast this growing method with this growing method. And I do have the soil block. Just give me 1 second. This is the soil block maker. Literally fill it up with dirt, press it down on the ground, squeeze it out, and you get these soil blocks. I'll show you. See this one? This was one of the first peas that I planted. It's going in the ground today, but it's a soil block. It's held together by the roots. Ooh, I have to be careful with it. Same thing with all these tomatoes. They're soil blocks. I can pick them up, I can handle them, I can move them. And these have 162 cells in each one. It takes me a half an hour. It takes me less than 5 minutes to fill it up. And then it takes me 25 minutes to sit there with a pencil and poke the holes and then fill it with something and then cover it up. So I can go through 162 times 5 is, I mean, 750, upwards of 800 cells that I did in about 2.5 hours. But watering them takes more time and it's more prone to drying out. These are take much longer. It takes me about 10 minutes to do a tray. These are just Amazon lunch trays. I bought them off Amazon. You know, the cafeteria lunch trays. And I can fit either 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times 4 or 6 times 4. Either way, whatever I want to do. It gets a little tight here. The watering method with these, when they're germinating, I spray the top of them with water with a sprayer. I'm looking around to see if I have a cup on hand. I don't. But you can take my word for it. No, I'm going to show you. Hold on. If I can do this one-handed, I'm going to show you. Let me show you. You can see the difference in the color. It's difficult on camera, but it's dry here. Now, all I have to do to water these, once the roots are formed and the roots are down at the bottom of the block, all I need to do to water these, is pour water in the bottom of the tray. You see the water moving around the tray? I'll let this thing fill up, and the water will soak up through the blocks, and I don't have to worry about any of these crops dying. And it keeps water away from the tops of these so they don't mold, they don't burn, so on and so forth. That's why this is my favorite. It's slower to make, but it's easier to maintain, easier to transplant. I don't know how I'm going to transplant all of these successfully. I know I'm going to lose some of the crops here. So that's why this is my favorite method. I'm planting today. These are sunflowers. I'm going to start planting sunflowers. I'm going to show you just how easy it is to plant these. Take a look. Oh, look at this. You see? The block is self-containing. I can put it on this tray. Just got to be careful with the other ones. And the beauty of it is, see, this one's popping just now. I don't know about this one. The beauty of it is that when they don't germinate, I can replace them with things that I want to put in the garden later on. Basil. Okay, I put basil around my tomato plants to enhance the flavor. So when these blocks don't germinate, I can reuse them. It's beautiful. Anyways, that's my germination methods. Not my best year for germination, but I'm not gonna complain. Okay, I'm gonna show you how I plant this stuff. This is going to be part of a larger video that I'll cut and edit later down the line. The reason that I use this method of germination is because this container had 100% germination success. This container all but 2. And I don't know the difference in species between these 3. I know that they're different species, but I know that this large one is the Atlantic giant pumpkin. And today's a perfect day, as you can tell. It's kind of gloomy outside, but it's a perfect day to germinate. Just in case, I've got the spray bottle with me. Make sure the roots don't dry out while they're exposed to oxygen. Okay, here I am, mid-process, planting everything. This is my Three Sisters field. And the way that it's done, I plant the stuff here, and I put some straw around it just so I remember not to step on it. And I alternate. So this section right here is sunflowers, squash, and beans. This section is corn. This section is beans. Squash, beans, sunflowers. then it's reversed. Corn, sunflower, squash, and beans, corn. And then the next section, sunflower, squash, and bean, corn, sunflower, squash, and bean. So it zigzags. You see? It zigzags. Alright. Here's how so I don't till the soil. Remember, tilling is killing. And the soil is a network of living organisms, plants, fungus, bacteria, insects, worms, etc., etc. So I cut out the spot that I want to plant on. See all that green matter right there? That's all dandelion, hairy bittercress, and clover. So there's tons of nitrogen in there, and the dandelion is good for calcium. I could harvest them and eat them, which I will. I should wash them off because there could be bacteria on there. But there's probably more bacteria in the meat that people eat. So I love dandelion. Anyways, I flip this over and chop it up. Watch. One-handed. That's dangerous, but you can see. Turn it upside down and then chop it. Maybe turn it just a little bit, but I want to keep that green stuff down. Just like that. That's simple. That's how that's the most tilling that I'll do. Just like that. Let me show you the anatomy of how I'm doing it this year. This isn't ideally how it would be done, but you have to understand that my stock is limited because I'm going for genetic diversity. The beans that I'm planting this year are different from the beans I'm planting last year. Same with the squash. If I was to plant, let's say, so for example, this year with the corn, I'm germinating them this way so that I know that I'm gonna get 10 good seeds, because I only have, if there's 15 plots, I only germinated about 200 of them. So if it's a 75% germination rate, then I'll be getting 10 per. I'll go over the math when everything is all in bloom, maybe a foot off the ground so you can see it for real. But this is the anatomy of what it looks like here. This is the anatomy of what it looks like here, the way that it's planted. And then I simply cover them and then put some hay over it. And what I'll end up doing, because I have some buckwheat germinating, and I'm gonna add more flowers to this, like borage. Borage goes with the squash. It improves their growth and their flavor. I add lupine to every single one of these. Lupine is a flower that fixes nitrogen in the soil. I add to this one, I add amaranth around it, and I also add, oh, that's it. This one is amaranth and lupine. This one is borage and lupine. Oh, and basil goes with the corn, I think. I can't exactly remember off by memory. Now, this is set up to be in rows, long ways. See? That's why I have the tape measure out, keeping myself straight and patterned. What I'm eventually going to do, because I have buckwheat germinating, when I get the final head count, the final roll call of the buckwheat, I'm going to plant the buckwheat in between here, boom, in between here, boom. You see what I'm saying? On either side of the buckwheat, I'm going to be planting radishes, boom. The radishes I'm going to direct sow. And then amongst that, I'm going to be planting marigolds and geraniums. Now, like I said, I'll go over the math. When I did this just corn, and I had rows of it, I would fit 180 corn plants. With this model, I'm fitting 150 corn plants, but I'm fitting a ton of everything else in there. And I'll go over it. I'll go over the math, and I'll go over the work that Cornell SIPS has done. That's their agricultural program. But as you can see, I've got the tape measure out. That's 1 foot, 4 feet, 7 feet, all the way down, 10 feet. I paced these out with my feet, and it was almost perfect. There was a few times where it skewed. But as you can see, the size of this is 30 feet. And the width of it is just under 10 feet. So the area of this is 300 square feet. That's it. And hopefully this year I have a substantial enough harvest where I can weigh the food before I eat it, and I can crunch the numbers of how much food I can produce in 300 square feet with this model alone, because I can harvest the lupine. They're a little bit over seasoned. I don't know what they taste like, but I can harvest the sorrel for lettuce, the lupine. I can harvest the dandelions, the flowers, the stems, the leaves, and the roots. Okay, mullein has medicinal purposes. I'm leaving that there because it actually doesn't, it's in between rows, so I'm leaving that. What else can I harvest? Oh, this. I figured what this stuff was. This is hairy bittercress. This is edible. I can harvest all of this stuff. This creeping Charlie. That I can harvest as well. I have mugwort, which technically I could harvest, but I'm just trying to get rid of it. I have clover growing. All is clover now. Clover. This is the ground cover that I want. You see how low it is and how thick it is? That's my goal. In here, last year they get taller. Last year I inaccurately identified this. Hold on. I inaccurately identified this as goosefoot. It's actually lamb quarters. They're very similar, but they're both edible. It's a relative of quinoa. A bunch of this stuff is just weeds that I have to get rid of, but it's ground cover for now, so I'm not complaining. And like I said, this was just a quick video and update. Mid-process, I'm going to use parts of this and clip it in with a video, give a nice, a thorough explanation of my methodology, and I'll have the pictures behind it. This is a system that I've been developing. It's a combination of the Eastern indigenous Americans doing Three Sisters gardening and the the technical term is the Colorado Plateau, 8,000 feet above sea level, the high desert Hopi method of planting, and with the now scientific inquiry that goes on studying the biochemical relations of plants that's done in laboratories. It's just a very in-depth method of growing these plants, understanding the relationship between plants, how they work together. And this is what my garden looks like when it's fully weeded. I mean, you can still see I have little bits of grass here and there. I'm not worried about it. I got 90% of the weeds out, and all the green you see here is staying. Carrots, mushrooms, that's a good sign. That means there's life in the soil. I got some thistle here, dandelion. These are what's called volunteer radish. I didn't plant these. One of the radishes that I had went to seed and it just threw them everywhere. So I'm going to leave that there, harvest it for its greens. All along here, there's some large sorrel. You see this? It literally looks like a spear. This is one of the tastiest edibles out there. It's like citrus, like tangy. Look at the strawberries already blooming. This is my ground cover, and the reason I leave these trees in my garden, so now you can see it demonstrated. See how lush and green this is. You pull back this layer and you see dead leaves from the trees that were dropping here. So it gets a lot of sunlight, but it's not 100% sunlight, but I take a lot of work out of it. And as you can see, look how green it is. It gets what it needs. Now I obviously have to cut down some of the sunflowers. I obviously have to clean up some of this stuff and that stuff, but that's just another project for another day. The timing of everything said I need to begin planting, cleaning up that stuff. Okay. And here I am working on the place that the beets and the onions and the cauliflower will go. Here are my plants. I've been organizing and cleaning them up. I identified this as oxalis. This is edible as well. I got a whole bunch of stuff going on, and this was just a quick update for like I said, I will have an in-depth explanation. of what my Three Sisters method is. It's the highlight, but I'm gonna wait until all of that is full bloom. And the daisies are finally, the tulips are finally starting to do something. So, signing out.